there's a function called socket.io. Now on the client, all I say is, just like in WebSockets before, I say IO connect and I give it a server URL. And then it will send me a connected message when the server acknowledges that. And that server-side message will have your user ID. On the server, the user ID is just the number 1. Whenever another player joins in, it gets incremented to number 2, number 3. And when you shoot, all you do is tell the server, hey, I want to shoot at another user ID. This probably is a bit hardcore, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into an actual live project to flesh it out and show you how easy it is. Now this is a real-life multiplayer server. It's probably proprietary, but it's cool. You guys can use it. On the server, it's saying listen, and it's listening on a port. So on the server, you just say listen on port 80 or port 81, any number between 0 and the thousands that you can do. The best one is port 80 or 8080 because they're not blocked by the networks by default. But if you get into the ropey ones, they think you're a Trojan virus or something. So it's just now listening for people connecting. Whenever a connection is made, he's given an object called socket. So all he does there is he gives that socket a session ID, and then he sends that session ID using the emit function to the client. On the client, IO connect, he's connected to the server. When he receives that connected message, he now has his session ID. And now that he's got his session ID, he can then shoot at. So before, I was pressing right to move right. Now I can have it, when I press space, I can emit that socket to the server, and the server will then send that message to all the connected clients. And once they receive that message, they can re-simulate that message. So I'll give you an example. I shoot in my game. I send that shoot message to the server. The server tells the other player that I have shot. So inside the game, I'm recreating that shooting event. Probably not doing the best of jobs explaining this, but don't worry guys. This code is open source. There's a demo that goes along with this. There's a really good Node.js. Sorry, I don't have the internet. I'll tweet it out later. There's a really good free Node.js server that you can use remotely, and you just upload your JavaScript file to it, and that can be your server. And on the client, you just connect to that IP address. I'll send it off as part of this connection. So, continuing on the shooting, when you receive it on the client, just like I did before in the second player, he will receive a shoot message on the server, and then he'll just emit that shoot message to all the clients. So the server just has a list of connections. He receives a shoot message from one client, and he tells all the other clients that that client has shot, and then they replay it. Any questions? This is probably a bit ropey. You guys get it? It's just very, very basic messaging. I tell one guy, and he goes ahead and do it. Now there is some to-do stuff to worry about, but if you're just getting up and running with multiplayer, don't worry about it too much. There's stuff like load balancing, there's stuff like latencies, and there's stuff like server-side validation. And I'll just quickly mention that. When you have one server node, he can only handle a certain amount of connections. So what you're going to have to do is, if your game becomes meteoric, like that guy's Ace of Spades, you're going to have to set up several server nodes. And each server node can only handle a certain amount. So you're going to have to do stuff like, if it gets complicated, limit the amount of connections each server can go in. And a good way to go about this is limit it geographically. So just say you have a virtual game map. If a player is in the left side of the map, and that map is packed out, all the players on the left side of the map will run on one server. If the player moves to the right a bit, he will now transfer from that server to this server, because he'll only see the players in this vicinity. If he moves right a bit more, he'll now be on this server. And just like real life human traffic, if one area gets too populated, you can't actually physically move there. So it makes sense. And there's some subdivision hacks or techniques called octrees that's very, very prolificated inside client-side development. You can use the exact same way inside servers. Big thing you're going to worry about though is latency. Now, not everyone has awesome Wi-Fi connection like this. O2 Arena Place. No Wi-Fi, okay. Some people are on Edge, some people are on 3Gs. Everyone's on different ratios, so you really need to think carefully about how you're going to simulate the game. You can't just say, I'm here, I'm in this XY position, and I'm shooting in this XY position. You're going to have to be a bit clever. And one of the popular techniques to get around this is, rather than just saying, I'm here, and he's here, shoot in this direction, and when he receives the message, just say 5 seconds later, he could have moved over here. So a good way to get around this is, rather than saying shoot in this direction, say validate it, and then say shoot at that player. And then in this game world, no matter where he's actually moved off to, he's going to try shooting at you. And no matter where you are, you're going to try shooting at him. We okay for time? Sure? Okay. Probably a bit too much. Don't worry guys, there is help for you guys. You don't actually need to learn any of this. There's some really amazing frameworks. This is like the that was the hardest core ever programming you'd get to do in your life if you wanted to go down. I mean, you could get harder, of course, like NASA or something. Not NASA, it's okay. There's stuff like FreeJS is like the most popular JavaScript graphics library. And what that does is it gives you an easier API to do some awesome 3D graphics, to do some animations, to do some post-processing effects for you. There's a really wonderful British startup called Play Canvas. They're making a really awesome 3D editor for making games, and they have a really great first-person shooter demo to use. There's these guys up in America that I met called Clay.io. They're making an app store for HTML5 games. Some awesome cool guys, I think they're in Romania, called Gameleon. They're making a map editor for 2D. I probably said too much about hardcore stuff. I'm going to open up to a couple of questions before going into how to make this stuff work on mobiles. If you guys want to know. Anyone have any questions, maybe? Don't be shy. Like, if you want to advertise your game, shout it out. You can ask anything. You can scratch your hair and pretend to ask something if you don't. I will give you my t-shirt if you ask something. Okay.
Yeah,
okay, this guy, you're not actually getting my t-shirt.
In my university, that we're planning to make a freemium gamer, like for most markets. That's a work on. Yes, we're planning to put it on an Android. Do you know how to like make objects to buy? You know, like freemium games, you need like some extra levels like to sell. Do you know how to make those like levels available so players can buy them to apply to premium games?
Yeah, I mean, does anyone want to answer this question? I'm opening up to the crowd.